that made the world outside seem far away, like everything beyond my walls had dissolved into darkness. I sat in my chair, the weight of the day slowly easing from my body, hands wrapped around a hot cup of tea. The scent of chamomile curled in the air, soothing, grounding. The only sounds were the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house settling into itself. Then came the knock. Slow, steady. Not hesitant but not urgent either. Just there. My fingers froze around the cup. A strange sensation crawled up my spine, that deep, instinctive awareness that something was off. It was late. Too late for visitors. No one ever knocked on my door at this hour, and certainly not like that. I set my tea down carefully, listening, hoping I had imagined it. Another knock, the same rhythm. No mistake. Someone was there. I stood, every muscle in my body tensing as I moved toward the door. My bare feet were silent against the hardwood floor. I reached for the porch light switch but hesitated. Instead I leaned in, peering through the peephole. My breath caught him, standing under the dim porch light, hands shoved deep into the pockets of a worn-out jacket, shoulders slightly hunched against the cold. His face had changed, thinner, sharper lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there before. His hair was damp, dark strands clinging to his forehead. And in one hand a backpack, battered and old, slung low against his hip. A flood of memories surged forward, uninvited. The last time I had seen him. The last conversation. The way things had ended. My stomach twisted, a pulse of something sharp and electric coursing through my veins. I should turn away. Pretend I hadn't heard the knock. Lock the door, go back to my chair, pick up my tea and let the night swallow whatever had brought him here. But my hand was already reaching for the doorknob. The cold metal stung against my palm. I twisted, pulled, and opened the door. The air between us felt charged, thick with something unspoken. He didn't smile. Neither did I. For a second neither of us spoke. His eyes searched mine like he was trying to figure out how this was going to go. Like he wasn't sure if I would slam the door in his face. I should have. I finally managed, the word barely more than an exhale. Yeah. His voice was rough, scratchy, as if he hadn't used it much. It's me. He shifted slightly, adjusting his grip on the strap of his backpack. The movement sent a faint scent of rain and cold air toward me, familiar in a way that made my throat tighten. Can I come in? The question hung between us, heavier than it should have been. I should have said no. I should have stepped back, shaken my head, closed the door. But I didn't. I stepped aside. He walked in. The house swallowed him in its quiet warmth, the soft glow of the living room light casting long shadows along the walls. He dropped his backpack near the door, shrugged off his jacket and looked around like he was taking in what had changed, what had stayed the same. I closed the door and turned to face him, arms crossed over my chest, a weak attempt to brace myself. Tea? I asked, the word slipping out before I could rethink it. He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Yeah. Thanks. His hands curled around the cup when I handed it to him, fingers lingering on the ceramic like he was trying to absorb the warmth. I watched him, waiting, knowing that whatever had brought him here, he wasn't ready to say it yet. He lifted the tea to his lips, took a slow sip and met my eyes over the rim of the cup. Thanks for letting me in. The wind hummed against the windows. Outside, the night stretched on, endless and uncertain. I knew deep down that by opening that door I had let in more than just him. And whatever came next, there was no undoing it. Morning arrived with a pale light spilling through the blinds, stretching long shadows across the floor. The air was still, the quiet only broken by the distant hum of the refrigerator. But something was different. The house no longer felt entirely mine. There was movement in the kitchen, faint, unhurried sounds of cabinets opening, the clink of dishes, the steady drip of coffee filling a cup. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years. Yet it settled into the space like it had never left. The realization sent a slow ripple through me, an uneasy mix of familiarity and intrusion. Stepping toward the doorway, I paused just out of sight. He was standing at the counter, sleeves pushed up, hair still damp from a shower, his movements fluid, practiced. And then I saw it, he was wearing my shirt. An old, oversized thing, soft from years of washing, something I only ever wore to bed. But on him it looked different, like it belonged to him now. Like the house itself had absorbed him overnight, making space where none should have been. The sight of it sent an uncomfortable pull low in my stomach, something I couldn't quite name. He moved through the kitchen with ease, his hands familiar with the placement of everything, reaching for a spoon in the right drawer without hesitation, pouring coffee into 2 cups as if it was something he did every morning. There was no hesitation in his presence, no awkwardness of a guest overstaying their welcome. It was something else entirely, an unspoken understanding, a quiet claiming of space that I wasn't sure I had agreed to. I told myself I should be irritated. The lines were too blurred, the past creeping in where it had no right to be. But as I stood there watching, feeling the weight of something shifting inside me, irritation wasn't what I felt at all. It was something far more dangerous. The scent of coffee filled the air, rich and warm, curling around me like a thread pulling me forward. I stepped inside, my bare feet cool against the hardwood, reaching for a cup without a word. The warmth of the ceramic grounded me, a poor distraction from the heaviness in my chest. The silence stretched between us, thick with things unsaid. He didn't explain why he was still here. I didn't ask. There was no point. I already knew. The moment held a weight of its own, pressing against me, forcing memories to the surface. Memories I had spent years pushing away. The last time he had been in this house, things had been different. We had been different. But that had been before choices had been made, before I had walked down the path that led to the life I had now. A life that, until last night, had felt secure. But now, standing in my own kitchen, watching him move with an ease that shouldn't have still existed, I wasn't so sure anymore. He leaned against the counter, fingers absently tracing the rim of his cup, a faint crease between his brows. There was something restless about him, something unsettled that had nothing to do with the coffee in his hands. The weight in his expression told me more than words ever could. It wasn't just about a place to stay. It never was. The past had a way of creeping in quietly, slipping through the cracks when you weren't looking, making itself at home before you had the chance to stop it. And now it was here, sitting across from me, wearing my shirt, drinking my coffee, unraveling something I had spent years trying to keep tightly wound. I took a slow breath, feeling the sting of my own decisions pressing against my ribs. I should have told him to leave. I should have drawn a line in the sand, reinforced the boundaries that were already beginning to fade. But instead I let the moment linger, let the silence stretch between us like a thread waiting to snap. And then I made the mistake of speaking. "You can stay." The words left my mouth before I could stop them, before I could take them back and pretend this wasn't happening. His gaze lifted to mine, unreadable, but I saw it. Just for a second, the flicker of something deeper, something that had been waiting, patient and quiet, for far too long. It was a mistake. And I had just made it. The days slipped by faster than I expected, folding into each other with an ease that should have unsettled me more than it did. He was still here. Still moving through my house like he had never left, like the years in between had been nothing more than a brief pause. We settled into something unspoken, something dangerously familiar. Mornings filled with quiet routines. Coffee, shared silence, the occasional brush of shoulders in the kitchen that lingered a second too long. Afternoons spent finding ways to pass the time, conversations slipping into laughter, the weight of the past momentarily forgotten. But it was the nights that felt different, charged in a way that neither of us acknowledged but both of us felt. It was always there, that tension, subtle but constant, like an unstruck match waiting for a spark. The way his eyes lingered when he thought I wasn't looking. The way my breath hitched at the smallest, unintentional touch. The way neither of us ever seemed to be in a hurry to say goodnight. It was the kind of thing that crept up slowly, threading itself into every glance, every word, every moment that stretched just a little too long. And no matter how many times I told myself it was nothing, that it would pass, I knew I was lying. That night the air in the house felt heavier. Maybe it was the storm rolling in, thunder rumbling low in the distance, the scent of rain thick in the air. Maybe it was the dim glow of the lamp casting shadows against the walls, making everything feel smaller, closer. Or maybe it was just inevitable. We had spent the evening like too many others, talking, laughing, pretending that there wasn't something else lurking beneath it all. But the space between us on the couch felt different this time. Too small. Too charged. I should have stood up. I should have walked away before it happened. But I didn't. He shifted beside me, a slow, lazy movement, his arm resting along the back of the couch, his fingers so close to my shoulder I could feel the warmth of them without even touching. I could hear my own breathing, could hear his, steady but deeper now, heavier. The room felt too quiet, the silence thick with something that wasn't quite hesitation but wasn't yet action. Then it happened, Small, almost nothing. A shift, a brush, the barest accidental touch of his hand against mine as I reached for my glass. It should have been nothing. It should have been easy to ignore. But the moment our skin met, something inside me snapped. I froze. He didn't. He turned his hand over, palm up, fingers barely curled, an invitation without words, a choice laid bare between us. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, in my wrists, in every inch of my body that suddenly felt too warm. I should have pulled away. I should have laughed it off, let the moment slip away before it became something else. But I didn't. I looked up and he was already watching me, his gaze dark and steady, waiting, patient in a way that made my stomach tighten. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was both of us, drawn together by something neither of us wanted to name. But when his hand slid to the side of my face, fingers threading into my hair, tilting my chin just enough, I let him. The first touch of his lips was slow, deliberate, testing. But the second wasn't. It was fire, sharp and demanding, breaking whatever restraint had been left between us. His hands moved, pulling me closer, and I let him. My fingers curled into his shirt, gripping, anchoring myself even as the world tilted. My mind screamed that this was a mistake, that there was no coming back from this, but my body didn't care. Somewhere deep inside I knew. We had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The sound of the front door opening sent a jolt through me, a sharp reminder that reality had returned. My husband was home. I forced myself to breathe, to move, to act as though nothing had changed. But everything had. He set his bag down, stretched, looked at me the way he always did, warm, familiar, steady. But when he wrapped his arms around me, pulling me in for a slow, lingering embrace, I felt it. The difference. The weight of someone else's hands still lingering on my skin. I smiled, pressed my face in. But when he wrapped his arms around me, pulling me in for a slow, lingering embrace, I felt it. The difference. The weight of someone else's hands still lingering on my skin. I smiled, pressed my face into his shoulder, inhaled the scent of his cologne, the one I had always loved. But instead of comfort, I felt something else. Comparison. The way he touched me, careful and soft, nothing like the hunger I had felt before. The way he kissed me, affectionate, expected, not like it had been on that couch. My stomach twisted, guilt clawing at the edges of my mind, but not strong enough to drown out the thought that terrified me most. What if he knows? I kept moving through the night like nothing was wrong, slipping into routine, dinner, conversation, all the things that had once felt effortless but now felt like an act I wasn't sure I could sustain. My hands shook slightly as I passed him a plate. He noticed. His brow furrowed, a pause too long before he spoke. "You okay?" The words were simple, but the way he said them made my chest tighten. I smiled, too quickly, too easily, forcing a laugh. "Just tired." He nodded, but his eyes lingered, watching me, reading me in a way that made my skin prickle. He wasn't convinced. I knew it. And then there was the other problem. The one still in my house. He hadn't left. He had told me he needed more time, that he wasn't ready, that there was nowhere else to go. And I had let him stay. I had said yes when I should have said no. And now I was trapped between the life I had built and the life I was dangerously close to destroying. I told myself I could control this, that I could keep everything from unraveling. But deep down I knew. This was already slipping out of my hands. The candles flickered against the dim light of the dining room, casting soft shadows along the walls, stretching the illusion of normalcy further than it deserved. The table was set carefully, wine poured into the good glasses, the scent of roasted garlic and herbs filling the space. I had planned every detail, from the music humming low in the background to the way I had curled my hair, hoping that if everything looked perfect it might feel that way too. My husband sat across from me, his shoulders relaxed for the first time in days, his fingers tracing slow circles along the stem of his glass as he looked at me with something warm in his expression. "This is nice," he said, his voice steady, the kind of steady I had once taken comfort in. "I missed this." I smiled, nodding, forcing myself to hold on to the moment, to pretend the warmth in my chest was from his words and not the lingering ghost of something else, someone else. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine, a simple touch, familiar and sure, but my pulse didn't spike, my breath didn't hitch. I told myself that was a good thing. Dinner moved slowly, words exchanged in easy rhythm, laughter in the right places, but beneath the surface, my thoughts tangled, restless and heavy. I watched the way he spoke, the way he moved, comparing without meaning to. The way his hand rested on my thigh later as we sat on the couch. The way his lips brushed against mine when he leaned in, soft and unhurried, the way I had once loved. I kissed him back, my fingers curling against his chest, holding on like I could will myself into feeling only this, into forgetting the way someone else had kissed me just days before, the way that kiss had unraveled something inside me. He deepened the kiss, pulling me closer, and for a moment I let myself get lost in it, let myself fall into the familiar safety of what we had built. But then I closed my eyes and the wrong face flashed behind them. The wrong hands, the wrong mouth, the wrong heat curling under my skin. My breath stuttered, my chest tightening with something sharp, something that tasted too much like guilt and not enough like regret. I pulled away just enough for space, just enough to breathe. He didn't seem to notice, pressing a kiss to my forehead, his arms still around me. "I love you," he murmured, and I felt something inside me crack. Later, when the house had settled into silence, when I was finally alone in our bedroom, staring at the ceiling, willing myself to forget, my phone buzzed against the nightstand. A single message. 4 words. "You too thinking about it?" My throat tightened, my fingers hovering over the screen, heart pounding against my ribs. I shouldn't answer. I shouldn't even think about answering. But the truth was I already had. The days blurred into each other, routines shifting just enough to accommodate the weight of what I was carrying. Mornings still started with coffee, conversations still flowed at the dinner table, my husband still kissed me before he left for work. But beneath it all, something was cracking, something shifting, and I could feel it pressing against my ribs every second of the day. The stolen moments had become habit. Quick glances when no one was watching, a touch that lingered too long in passing, a hushed exchange behind closed doors. We told ourselves we were careful, that no one could see, that nothing had changed. But everything had. I tried to convince myself that I was still in control, that I could keep both worlds separate, that I could keep pretending. But my husband noticed. He wasn't the kind of man to accuse without reason, but he saw it. The way my phone was always face down, always on silent, the way I hesitated before answering simple questions, the way my mind seemed somewhere else even when I was standing right in front of him. At first it was subtle. A glance held a second too long. A pause before responding. Then came the questions. Late again? A casual remark over dinner, but I felt the weight behind it. "You've been busy lately," he said one night, watching me carefully, waiting for a reaction. "Everything okay?" The words were simple, but my hands tightened around my glass before I could stop them. I forced a smile, too tight, too quick. "Of course," I said, brushing it off with a laugh that didn't feel real. But I saw it in his face. The flicker of doubt, the way his eyes lingered on me like he was trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces no longer fit. And then there was him. He didn't hesitate anymore. He no longer waited for me to set the boundaries. He pushed. Subtly, deliberately. A touch at the small of my back as he passed, the way his fingers brushed my wrist when he handed me something, the way he looked at me like he already knew how this would end. He had stopped pretending this was temporary. He wasn't asking for permission anymore. And the worst part was I wasn't stopping him. Because deep down I knew I didn't want to. It started with a simple suggestion. "Let's go out." But the words themselves felt like an invitation into a different life. One where I could forget all the lines I had drawn, all the walls I had spent years building. He was calm as always, his eyes steady and warm, the kind of warmth that promised everything and nothing all at once. I tried to tell myself I could keep my distance, that this was nothing, just a night out to clear my head. But as he looked at me as we stood on the curb waiting for the cab, I knew this wasn't just about a night out anymore. We were playing a dangerous game, one I wasn't sure I could win. In the restaurant we acted like we were the only ones there. We spoke in lowered voices, our laughter too loud for the small, intimate space we occupied. He touched my hand across the table, his fingers brushing mine, and I felt the heat of it long after he pulled away. It was a game, a dance we were both too familiar with, moving in sync without needing to say anything. I didn't care about the people around us or the consequences anymore. I was lost in the moment, in the way his presence seemed to fill every gap in my life. It felt easy, too easy, and that's what scared me the most. The night stretched on, and the lines between right and wrong blurred even further. We walked through the city streets, the lights reflecting in the windows, the hum of distant conversations falling away as we moved closer to one another. I could feel the tension between us, the invisible pull, and with every step, every laugh I was pulled deeper into something I wasn't sure I could control. The quiet moments between us, the looks that lingered, the stolen glances. All of it wrapped around me like a cloak, making me forget about the life I had left behind, the life I was now betraying. When we returned to the apartment, I felt something shift in me. My heart was racing, my thoughts scattered, and as I stood in front of my door, I realized I didn't want to go in. I didn't want to face the life waiting for me on the other side. The apartment felt cold, distant, like a place I was only visiting, not living in. I stood there, key in hand, staring at the door, feeling the weight of what I was about to walk back into. The familiar sight of my home, the scent of our shared spaces, it all felt like a lie now. A part of me wanted to run, to step away from it all, to forget everything I had ever known. But another part of me, the part that had been chasing this for so long, was already taking the first step inside. I wasn't ready to face the truth. I wasn't ready to look at my life and admit how far I had gone, how deeply I had crossed every line. But the door opened and I stepped through, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The evening had stretched on longer than I anticipated, a haze of laughter and quiet conversation, all of it building to something I couldn't name. My mind had been somewhere else, trying to drown out the questions, trying to pretend that everything could be normal again, but there was no escaping the tension between us. I knew it, he knew it, and maybe most painfully my husband would know it soon enough. I had gone too far. We had gone too far. We barely noticed the time passing, the seconds slipping away as if we could outrun what was inevitably waiting for us. The air between me and him had shifted, and every glance felt like a promise, every movement too deliberate. We stood in the hallway, the door to my bedroom still open, the lights low, and for the first time I could feel it, the unspoken invitation between us. His hand brushed against mine, the touch lingering longer than necessary, and it was enough. Without thinking, he leaned in, his lips pressing against mine, the kiss soft at first, hesitant as though he was testing me, waiting to see if I would pull away. But I didn't. I let him. I kissed him back, the world around us falling silent as everything I had tried to hide, everything I had kept buried, came crashing to the surface. I didn't hear the door open, didn't hear the quiet footsteps crossing the room. It was only when I felt a presence behind me, when the air seemed to shift and freeze all at once, that I realized what had happened. I pulled away slowly, my heart racing, but it was already too late. My husband was standing in the doorway, his eyes wide with disbelief, the words caught somewhere between confusion and recognition. His gaze flicked between us, the realization hitting him in waves. I could see it on his face, that first moment of uncomprehending shock, followed by the painful understanding that settled in, sinking deeper with every second. I should have said something, should have explained, but my mouth felt dry, my mind too clouded to think. The silence between us felt suffocating, each breath I took too loud, too desperate. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, staring at me with a mixture of hurt and betrayal I didn't know how to fix. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. His eyes were locked on mine and I could see it. Everything we had built was already slipping through my fingers. The silence stretched on, a chasm too wide to cross, too deep to fill. And in that moment, as I stood there, caught between the past I had destroyed and the future that no longer seemed possible, I knew. There was no going back. Not anymore. He didn't say a word when he left. He didn't even look back. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed through the silence of the house, and I stood there, frozen, feeling the weight of everything I had just lost. I wanted to call after him, wanted to explain, to apologize, but the words were stuck in my throat, heavy and useless. It was too late for any of that now. The look in his eyes, the hurt, I wanted to call after him, wanted to explain, to apologize, but the words were stuck in my throat, heavy and useless. It was too late for any of that now. The look in his eyes, the hurt, the disbelief. It was etched into my mind and no amount of words could erase it. I was standing on the other side of something irreversible and there was no way back. I tried to breathe, tried to calm the frantic beat of my heart, but every corner of the house felt wrong now, like it was suffocating me, like I was trapped inside a life I no longer recognized. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text notification flashing on the screen, but I didn't need to look to know who it was from. He knew I was hurting, knew I was falling apart, and for a moment I almost welcomed his presence, his voice that had once been a comfort. He said I should explain, that I should tell him everything, that we could make sense of this together. But in that moment, standing alone in the room we had shared, I wasn't sure I wanted to explain anything to him. I wasn't sure I wanted to face him at all. What had started as a moment of weakness, a fleeting mistake, had turned into something I couldn't control. The lies, the secrecy, it was all catching up to me and I couldn't hide from it anymore. I didn't even know if I wanted to fight for my marriage anymore, not after everything I had done. Maybe it was too late for any of us to fix this. I sat down on the couch, my hands shaking, staring at the phone, willing myself to pick it up and call him, but I couldn't. The number was there waiting, but I knew the truth now. He wasn't going to answer. He wouldn't even want to hear from me. My heart twisted in a way that left me breathless, and I let the phone slip from my hands, watching it fall to the floor with a soft thud. Everything I had built, everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. My husband wasn't coming back. I wasn't sure he ever would. I could feel the walls closing in, the pressure of everything falling apart, and for the first time in my life I couldn't fix it. I couldn't make it right. And maybe that was the hardest part of all. I thought if I just explained, if I could make him see that it wasn't what it seemed, that it was a mistake, he might listen, he might understand. But when I tried, when the words tumbled out in a desperate, broken rush, all I saw in his eyes was the same cold emptiness, the same disbelief that had settled between us the moment he walked in that night. His face didn't soften, didn't change, and the silence between us felt like a wall, thick and impenetrable. "I don't want to hear it," he said, his voice flat, exhausted, like he had already made up his mind long before I had started speaking. It stung harder than I expected, but it was the truth and I knew it. He had heard enough and there was nothing left to say. He turned away from me, moving toward the bedroom, his movements slow, deliberate, like he was already gone, like he had already said goodbye to me in his mind. I followed, my feet dragging as I watched him pack his things, the clothes he had worn just this morning, the ones I had folded for him, now being tossed into a bag with no care. "Don't make this harder," he muttered, not looking at me, not giving me a chance to beg for forgiveness. His words were like a final blow, sealing the reality I had tried to deny for so long. This was it. It was over. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. He was leaving. The sound of his footsteps, the rustling of fabric, each small noise echoed through the house, louder than the silence between us, and in that moment, I felt everything collapse around me. The weight of my choices, the lies, the secret I had kept hidden, it all came crashing down, suffocating me. He was gone and I didn't know how to make it right. As he walked out the door, I felt something shift inside me, something that had been there all along but that I hadn't been able to see. The connection I had fought so hard to protect, the affair, the lies, it all seemed hollow now. The passion, the thrill, had faded, replaced with an emptiness that I hadn't anticipated. I had sacrificed everything for a fleeting moment of escape, and now I was left with nothing but the ruins of what used to be my life. The man I had betrayed, the one who had stood by me, who had trusted me, was gone. And in his place there was only a stranger, someone I wasn't sure I knew anymore. I hadn't realized it before, but now it was clear. I didn't want the life I had fought for, not anymore. I didn't want him, not in the way I had before. I had gone too far, and in doing so I had lost my way. As I stood there, alone in the empty house, I knew that no matter how much I wished for it, I couldn't undo what I had done. I had crossed a line, one I couldn't come back from. The past few weeks, the lies, the secrecy had all led to this moment, and now I was standing on the other side, looking at the pieces of my life scattered around me, wondering if there was anything left worth saving. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal, wasn't the broken promises. It was the fact that I had already let go of everything that once mattered.